This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
There is a new album from The Cult. It's called Under the Midnight Sun. It's coming out in October here in the U.S., and the band is on tour now. All the info, thecult.us. Ian Astbury with us. Ian, great to hear excellent new music from The Cult, man. Man, this is really good. And you and Billy, of course. We have the first single, Give Me Mercy, that we'll play shortly. But Under the Midnight Sun, the title comes from a time, I guess, recently, you experienced that very thing, the midnight sun. So tell us where you were and what your feelings were at the time when you were experiencing that.
Actually, when we were writing the record and putting the record together, we're always looking for content, obviously, for, socials. And we found this footage from 1986, I believe it was from a festival in Finland called Provinci Rock. And then the interesting thing about that festival was the stage actually had real flowers in front of it. So it was a very beautiful environment. It was pretty chill. I mean, to a degree, there was, some energy in there. But I remember walking around at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and the sun was still it doesn't go below the horizon in the Northern Hemisphere.
And this is what time of year? This is
in the summer, in the middle of the summer, yeah.
Yeah.
So the sun doesn't go below the horizon. So it's 3 in the morning, the sun's still up. But the scene around me was this really halcyon scene of, people making out, people drinking, interacting, and it was just such a beautiful moment. And it's one of those moments you retain, you keep it, it goes in your heart, and it was an incredible visceral memory. So I also was looking at the footage and I saw the festival and it reminded me of that, and I thought about Under the Midnight Sun as a title popped into my head, and I also used it to reflect the current moment that we're in. This is an anomalous moment in human evolution. We're in this anomalous moment that it's unique, and we're in this unique moment. We're in this existential crisis, and I thought it was an appropriate title to reflect the current moment.
This new album, did you go back to the first studio that you ever recorded, like the first album in or something?
Actually, you've done your research. Rockfield Studios in Wales was where we recorded the Dreamtime record, which wasn't actually released in the United States, but we were signed to an independent label in the UK called Beggars Banquet.
Right, yeah.
And we did that with John Brand. And Rockfield Studios is a very famous studios. I mean, Queen have recorded there, many artists have recorded there. So the actual backing tracks were cut at Rockfield Studios with Charlie Jones on bass, who's played with Goldfrapp, Plantin Page. His provenance is staggering. And Ian Matthews is a drummer from Kasabian.
Okay.
Because in many ways, the Cult has always been Billy and Ian. We've never, in the sense of a band, the John, Paul, George and Ringo classic, Mick, Keith, Ronnie, Charlie, Bill. That motive, it lasted for a minute, but it's just impossible with everybody has different responses to touring and the pressures of it. Lifestyle.
Yeah.
So you do lose members. I mean, you lose members through death. You lose members through lifestyle choices and
creative differences, whatever.
Creative differences.
Yeah.
But Billy and I have always maintained that relationship, and we're polar. I mean, there's no doubt. When we do come together and we connect, there's an alchemy, and that's undeniable.
And it just seems that you have the right chemistry, that when you do come together, you want to make and you create music,
That's what happens. That's the end product of us being in the room together.
When you went to that first studio that recorded the first album, did it seem smaller or bigger?
I didn't go there. I was sequestered in Los Angeles.
Oh,
I did everything by Zoom and
pandemic, right?
Yeah, it was pandemic. So that was one of the things that forced us to have to cut backing tracks. We were lucky enough to do initial sessions in Los Angeles in March 2020 with Tom Dalgety, the producer. He's produced Raw Blood, The Pixies, Ghost. I mean, young English producer. New blood in the room, and he picked the studio and put together the band with Ian and Charlie and Billy. So they cut everything off the floor. So the band was integrated. I was involved. I gave them references. One of them being, I was looking at your photographs on the wall. Brian Jones was a very important catalyst for this record.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
Brian Jones to me was used Briar Peorage, Genesis Peorage, Psychic TV had a song called Godstar. And the recognition was that Brian Jones was the talisman of the Rolling Stones. He was the one that was the blues aficionado.
He got the band together too.
He put the band together. He named the band, and he was also the one that was the most experimental. You see Brian Jones with a sitar in his hands. You see Brian Jones before the Beatles. I mean, Brian Jones was, an innovator, and he was in Marrakesh. He was there with he went and recorded the master musicians of Jujuka in Morocco, and that sort of North African sound permeated into rock music and psychedelia, and a lot of people don't really know the true provenance and origins of how we got into that period. I mean, even Pink Floyd were influenced by that, and many other artists, and that's how we got into world music, and that's how we got into different rhythms, different cadences, bands like The Doors. I mean, and then of course it evolved into breakbeats and hip hop, and there is this correlation, but North Africa was definitely a very important thing, as was Andalusia, southern Spain. I'm a huge fan of Lorca, the Spanish poet, and of course working with Robert Krieger, Spanish Caravan. So there's many things, and this whole new sub-Saharan African scene like Mudu Mokhtar. These bands are just incredible. There's a real resurgence in rediscovering original influential sources in the music. So I was very keen on getting the guys to listen to this music and bring in that rhythmic cadence, because in many ways rock music has got away from its origins and its roots, and it's become homogenized. It's very formulaic in many ways. You could interchange a lot of the band members in a lot of the bands now, and they all seem to be cut from the same mold. Whereas originally, when you had people like Brian Jones, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, John Lennon, you had Roger Waters, you had these incredible visionaries, Miles Davis, Nina Simone, etc., etc. The list goes on.
Ian Astbury from The Cult is with us. A new album, Under the Midnight Sun. It's coming out in October here in the U.S. Band is on tour now. All the info, thecult.us. How's the tour been going?
It was initially walking out from. We went to Florida for the first, which is polarized, and but the Cult audience we have a very diverse audience. I mean, we're not your regular Fries. Our audience is incredibly diverse. Our doors are open to everybody. We've always had that. It's not even a policy, it just is. And so to walk out in front of an audience, it was really interesting because everybody, even the audience were like, how does this work again? Being in a room with people.
Right, yeah.
So very quickly, after about 3 or 4 songs, felt more comfortable and integrated, and then we were able to go through Florida, Oklahoma, Texas.
Those shows, were those the first
Georgia.
Ones for you?
Yes.
Post-pandemic?
Yeah. The last show we did, I believe, was in 2019 in Boston in early December. And then we went into sessions for Under the Midnight Sun.
Right.
And then pandemic hit, and then we navigated that. I was in LA when police cars were burning and bullets were flying, and just a couple of blocks away from my house. So we're immersed in that, and all that energy went into the record.
Right, yeah. And now the tour. So it must feel great to just get back out there and play in front of people.
It's interesting because, this idea, it's always projected onto me that, aren't you excited? Isn't it great? It's much more personal than that. I mean, you can go, you pick up injuries, you got things going on at home, we all have lives.
Yes.
So, but you have to bring it together for the show. So there's a certain moment in the day when you separate yourself from that, you compartmentalize things, and then the show is the most important thing. That's the reason that you're there, to deliver the best performance and integrate that audience and make something happen. So there's an adrenal component, and we really focus our energies so that and the set we have right now is a core set of songs. It's almost like a rebirth in many ways. It's a reintroduction. Like, ladies and gentlemen, reintroducing the Cult. We have a whole audience that their entry point may have been Born Into This or Choice of Weapon or Hidden City, or they heard She Sells Sanctuary in Euphoria. And that's their entry point. Because I'm looking at the audience, and it's evident.
The age goes from young to
Yeah, it's almost like we're like the Grateful Dead in some ways. We have that real sense of community and synergy, which is what I really truly love. You have, if you just even look through the T-shirts, it's everything's represented.
Well, a lot of bands and artists that we speak to here, they say that 2 hours or whatever it is, how long your show is, that's when you can tune out everything else going on in your life and just have fun for those 2 hours.
I don't have fun.
Or fun.
It's catharsis.
Right, yeah. Or spiritual, religious, whatever it is.
Communion, catharsis, it's really what it's about, and that's the true essence of live performance. It's gathering, it's ritual space, it's even though there's a commercial component, you buy a ticket, there's an exchange of that goods and services and everything like that. But ultimately, when you're in that room, you're there to create a moment, and it takes work. It takes consciousness. The difference between being an entertainer and a conscious performer, I do believe there is a difference.
Yeah.
Where you're consciously aware of, empathetically being aware of an audience, of their emotional, you can kind of read people quite well.
Give me mercy, love will find you. Give me mercy, a new language.
Yes.
Those are just some of the lyrics to the new single, Give Me Mercy, which can be taken and interpreted in many ways. It all depends on who is listening and who they are. And that's the beauty of songwriting.
Yeah, the butcher's knife in his trembling hands. The shimmering veil. I don't hear those words being written in a time when we need the pink elephant in the room has to be addressed in one way or another. And the song is a reflection of the times. It's a plea for, we need a new language because the language that we have right now, we don't seem to be communicating with each other very well.
No.
So how do we transcend that? What are the stakes? What are the values of language, the meaning of language, the polarization of viewpoints, the inability to abstract from self? I'm right, you're wrong. Smash.
Right, yeah.
Or
how about fact checking?
Fact checking. I mean, who's checking the facts and who's qualified to check the facts? The best fact checker is you. You go and look yourself. I started this tour by going to 38th and Washington in Minneapolis, where George Floyd was murdered.
Yeah.
That's where I went. I didn't go as some sort of dark tourist. I was empathetically drawn to that space, and I went there, and the energy is palpable, and the community is scarred, and it was really moving. But that is the tone of America that we live in today. And being in DC last night, you can really feel that energy. Young women are scared. We have to stand by our sisters.
Definitely.
Reproductive rights are human rights. The rest of the world is looking. United Nations have even condemned it. So please, let's address these issues. And everyone's, you're an entertainer, what do you know? Well, actually, I know quite a lot in terms of my own life experience. People don't know me. They have no idea who I am. They usually don't ask about Ian. They objectify you and project onto you in a certain way, as they did with Brian Jones or artists like that, because they looked a certain way and they make a certain assumption. You're privileged in some ways. I'm more than grateful. I have gratitude for where I am. I'm fully aware of where I am in my life. But it comes as a price, and it's my livelihood is also. But we do our best to respond to the moment and to integrate emotion, to integrate life experience into what we do, and that's the cult. I mean, that's cult in a nutshell. We've been like that since day one.
I have to tell you that the first time I heard Love Removal Machine was from a car CD player. We are going back decades, of course.
No, you don't have to. No, but cassettes are quite fashionable.
Yeah, well, I was driving through the Lincoln Tunnel. Okay. I had the volume on 10. It was so good. I think I played it literally before I got to New Jersey to my parents' house, like 3 or 4 times.
What was it that you were listening to?
Love Removal Machine.
Oh, Love Removal Machine. Okay.
Yeah. And it just blew my mind. And when I told people that I was having you on the show, everyone's like, "Oh, I love the cult." Lots of them also said, Ian was so amazing when he went on tour with Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger. And everyone seems to remember that.
Well, that's good.
I mean, it was only. I guess it was 2002. It was 20 years ago when you first started doing it.
Yeah.
But people still really remember that, along with the Cult, of course. But that moment, they really sticks with people.
I did 150 shows with Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger. It was an honor, a privilege. It was a 12-year courtship. The audition was 12 years. I did 150 shows with those guys, and I learned so much from them. They're my teachers, my benefactors, my mentors. I love them dearly. God bless you, Ray. It was profound. It was profound experience to have that, to do that. I mean, I did as many shows as Morrison.
Wow.
The European tour.
I didn't know that.
I remember we were touring in Europe, and Ray says, "This reminds me of the 1968 European tour." I was like, "How many shows did you do?" And he went, six. And one of the shows, Jim didn't even turn up because he was in Amsterdam and people were handing him, whatever.
Yeah, everything.
Smoke this, take that.
Yeah.
And so he was in no condition to even do the show. So Ray sang the show, which did happen occasionally.
Right.
I think Grace Slick was involved in it. The Jefferson Airplane were opening for them, and I think Grace was on stage with them. But the beauty of that was it was very much Ray and Robbie at that moment said, "Why now? Why are you doing this now?" I said, "Well, if not now, then when?
Yeah.
When can we ever play our music again?" And initially, John Densmore was involved, but there was an interfraternal spats that very painful. That a familiar thing that had to be sorted out, and sadly, it was done in public. I got dragged into the court. It was a whole to-do.
Yeah.
I mean, I was even speaking with Andy Morrison, his brother, and he's said, "Thank you so much for representing my brother's music," which was profound to have that.
Completely.
And meeting people like Michael McClure, who's a mentor for Morrison, and people giving us their blessing. And it did evolve. But I remember I think our 6th show was in New York for Rolling Stone anniversary. We played with James Brown, Lenny Kravitz.
Wow.
It was quite a stacked bill. I think, I'm not sure where the Strokes played, but the New York Times gave us a scathing review, and they ripped it to shreds. And it was like, with all respect, could you imagine yourself as an individual coming into this environment and synergizing this in 6 shows? I had to learn 40 songs in 6 weeks. By show 30, it was integrated. I mean, it really was integrated. We had Phil Chen on bass, we had Ty Dennis on drums, who played with Robbie, and of course Ray and Robbie. But it was an integrated thing, and we were playing soccer stadiums in Buenos Aires that were being burnt down. 60,000 people jumping up and down.
Amazing.
They broke the foundations of the stadium. Or playing in Athens, where young people were weeping in front of Ray and Robbie and reaching out to them, these old gods, with such emotion, and the emotion around the doors, and the youth that were coming, and the energy and the community. That was intoxicating. It meant so much to people, and it's done. You'll never see it again.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's still there today. The appreciation of their music and, Jim's lyrics.
I stood at Jim's grave with Ray and Robbie.
Wow.
And I went to walk away, and they grabbed me and said, "No, you stand here with us. You belong here with us."
Incredible.
That was one of the most profound, powerful moments.
I can't even imagine.
For me, that was so moving, and Robbie was very upset, and Ray was very upset, and it was incredibly intimate. And I'm sharing that with you because I know there's a lot of Doors fans there was a lot of Doors fans who were skeptical about me doing it, and they chose me for a reason, because I was a certain archetype. And Ray said, "Yeah, you have the archetype. You're Afro-pagan, Celtic, shamanic, Buddhist. You have all of that." And
those are
said,
great
"Thank
words. I love that when they're describing you.
But that was Ray. Ray saw that. They knew that I was cut, because there was other individuals considered, but Ray didn't feel that they had the layers of character or experience, because I had been in Tibet. I have traveled. I have played in South Africa. I mean, I've traveled worldly, and they needed a mature, integrated individual to do it. And also, forget the fact that, Morrison and I had the same haircut. It really was about delivering as a performer.
Well, vocally, you got to have the shot. I mean, and you did, and you do. So
that was a blessing. A baritone. Morrison was a baritone. And get, you think, oh yeah, I know these songs, and it was, no, you don't.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because Ray was like the nuance, and the thing I learned from them, probably the most profound thing, was space. What not to do, when to step out, when to let a musical. A moment of and that's now being incorporated into the cult. When you let the music breathe, there's a spontaneity, there's improvisation. They did that often.
Right, the note you don't play might be the most important one.
Exactly.
In a song.
Ask Miles Davis; he'll tell you that all day long. The notes you leave out, and we live in a culture now where every single note is filled with something. And space is really important.
I get emails about listen to this bedroom pop. No, I'm not going to listen to that.
Well, it's fine. Some of it's good.
Yeah, some of it.
Some of it's good, but it's, I mean, I don't disparage young artists. Absolutely not. Who are we to critique that? It's not. No, you can't even compare it. The music of its time, there's some incredible music being made right now. And it'll be celebrated. This period of music will be celebrated in culture as well. The archetypes, though, from the 50s, the 40s, from Billie Holiday all the way through, we're only just beginning to look at the influence of, the blues artists and how important they were. And if you get the opportunity, any, blues artists who have been around for several decades, please go and see them.
Or jazz artists, yeah.
Or jazz,
definitely.
exactly.
Yeah.
Jazz. There's another thing with rock music is, they forget that jazz was an incredible influence. Without jazz, you wouldn't even have a John Bonham.
Right.
No. You wouldn't have a Charlie Watts. You wouldn't have the backbeat of rock and roll. Speaking
of guys with swing, Charlie Watts, man, he was like a nanosecond behind everybody, which made it swing so much,
The Charlie Watts is no doubt one of the pillars of contemporary music, no doubt. And where do we honor these individuals? Sadly, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a self-serving institution. It doesn't really mean anything. Sadly, it's not recognized the influence that a lot of these individuals have had, and that's a travesty that we don't. They do it in the film industry. They celebrate their icons,
and the pioneers, yeah.
But in rock and roll, in rock music, even in hip hop to a degree, we eat our young. We eat the old. We just, whatever's getting served, it's hotcakes, and you better have some personal core strength to be able to navigate the existential, emotional roller coaster that is this lifestyle. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So God bless you if you break out of your bedroom with your laptop MCP breaks, and good luck.
Yep.
As Keith Richards was asked about new music. He said, "They'll find out." They'll find out.
Yeah.
So what? They'll find out. I was like, oh, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
You do. You find out.
Ian Astbury with us from The Cult, the great new album everyone should go out and get and or pre-order. It's called Under the Midnight Sun. It's coming out in October here in the U.S., and the band is on tour. Go see them. All the info, thecult.us. Ian Astbury, thank you so much.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.